So this chapter will cover physical, cognitive, and socio-emotional development in adolescence. There are some slides that are just informative and have text on it for you to read through, and there are other slides that will play the recording of me talking and giving more information on that slide. So this is a longer PowerPoint, so take your time going through the slides and reading through them, as well as listening to the audio when attached. Adolescence covers approximately your teenage years, but some say as early as 11 or 12, some go up to 21, maybe even 23. More research shows lately that your adolescent brain is still present until you're 23. We know that the brain fully matures at 25, although I have seen recent studies that suggest your brain isn't fully mature until 30. So the ages are approximations here. But these are some items that we look for when puberty begins. We know that puberty begins for a girl when she gets breast buds, is what we call them when they appear. And for boys, it would be when the testicles drop, is the first sign of puberty. We still see a lot of stereotypes associated with this age range. We think that boys should be strong, that they should be muscular. If they're not, then they may be considered weak. We need to try and veer off from these stereotypes and, learn to promote positive body image, which will encourage self-esteem throughout the adolescent years. Girls we know are less happy with their bodies, have more problems with body image issues, and feel more negative and have lower self-esteem as a result. So these numbers are about a decade old, so they're getting to be a bit outdated. But I want you to think about, where are we now? Are our numbers the same? Have they gone up? Have they gone down? This is post-COVID time period here. So what happened during COVID? Did the adolescent sexuality and sexual behaviors increase, decrease, stay the same? And where do you think we're at since that time period? Obviously, nutrition and exercise is a problem. We see more obesity in children in general today, not just this age group. I think our schools have a hand in this as well. Our kids sit all day. The items in the lunchroom are not healthy. Kids are not eating the vegetables and fruits that they should on a daily basis. They're not exercising. There's more screen time involved, so they're just not active. Sleep, we know, is a problem with this age as well. Kids have a lot of pressure on them during their high school years, especially. They're taking more challenging classes. Some are taking college classes. If they're involved with any kind of sports clubs, extracurricular activities, they're doing those after school, which pushes them up late doing homework. So they're not getting enough sleep. Adolescents in general need 9 to 10 hours of sleep, is what we see here. So only 31% of U.S. adolescents sleep 8 or more hours a night. Most are sleeping significantly less than this. Obviously, work too would play a role. So students that have a job during high school, they're going from high school to work to home to do homework. Don't forget, adolescents need a social life, right? This is a big part of this time period and important for them to socialize with other peers. So sleep tends to take a back seat to what we see with this age group. These are still our 3 leading causes of death in adolescence: unintentional injuries, homicide, as well as suicide. We obviously have seen an increase in suicide or suicide attempts, suicide completions. We do have more males that are successful, but more females attempt suicide, and that's due to the methods in which they try. Men tend to, or males in general, tend to attempt and complete suicide in a more severe dangerous, risk-taking manner, versus girls are more likely to engage in behaviors that are not going to ensure death. Unintentional injuries has to do with their risk-taking behaviors. Car accidents would be a big part of this. Just, kids out having fun, being careless and not thinking. And homicide too is something that we tend to see more with our high school and or late teen age range. Substance use and abuse disorders are fluctuating over the years. We see increases, decreases. It depends on the community. It depends on, how well we educate. Depends on access, obviously. So these are numbers that we're always seeing going up and down when it comes to how many users we have. We've done a little bit better in some areas with education and prevention. We do not do the DARE program anymore, if anybody's familiar with that. But some police officers have worked closely with schools and communities to try and increase awareness of drug use and educate parents, and as well as children, adolescents, on the dangers of drug use. One major concern surrounding teenage pregnancy is the issue of prenatal care. Teenagers are significantly less likely to receive adequate prenatal care, they are more likely to smoke, and they are less likely to gain sufficient weight during the pregnancy. These behaviors influence the baby's health. They're at increased risk for low birth weight, long-term disabilities, and infant mortality. Another concern is the issue of cognitive readiness for parenting. Adolescents who were not cognitively ready for parenting were more likely to experience serious parenting stress and less likely to engage in responsive parenting. It is important that students understand the negative consequences associated with teenage pregnancy. They're not necessarily the result of teen pregnancy, rather the negative consequences that are associated with pre-existing conditions or background characteristics of the teenager. Individuals who live in poverty and have lower educational aspirations are more likely to become pregnant as teenagers. Individuals in low-income environments with lower educational aspirations are more likely to live in poverty as an adult, have lower status jobs, and have children with lower cognitive capabilities. Thus, it is important to examine these pre-existing conditions when examining the consequences of teenage pregnancy. Many adolescents are not emotionally prepared to handle sexual experiences, especially in early adolescence. Early sexual activity is linked with risky behaviors such as drug use, delinquency, and school-related problems. Other risk factors for sexual problems in adolescence include contextual factors such as socioeconomic status and poverty, family parenting, and peer factors. A recent study revealed that neighborhood poverty concentrations predicted 15 to 17-year-old girls and boys' sexual initiation. A recent study in low-income neighborhoods found that caregiver hostility was linked to early sexual activity and sex with multiple partners. A research review indicated that the following aspects of connectedness predicted sexual and reproductive health outcomes for youth. Family connectedness, parent-adolescent communication about sexuality, parental monitoring, and partner connectedness. A recent national study revealed a substantial increase in the use of contraceptives, 61% in 2009 compared with 46% in 1991. By U.S. high schools, this is by U.S. high school students the last time they had sexual intercourse. However, in this study, condom use by U.S. adolescents did not significantly change from 2003 to 2009. In 2009, 34% of sexually active adolescents did not use a condom the last time they had sexual intercourse. In 2009, births to adolescent girls fell to a record low.
The U.S. adolescent birth rate decreased by 8% from 2007 to 2009.
I mentioned this on an earlier slide, but it really depends on what textbook or online source you're looking at to try and get exact ages. Some say that it's about when puberty starts, which could be 9, 10, 11, 12. Girls start puberty earlier than boys, and then it stretches into late teens, early 20s. Would be our approximate age range for adolescents.
Current research has examined the potential advantages of playing video games. Given the vast importance of computer competence in today's adult work world, it is thought that video game playing may be beneficial. Video games may enhance adolescents' understanding and exposure to computers. They speculate that it may also enhance eye-hand coordination, numerical concepts, decision-making, and the ability to follow directions. Contrary to what many believe, there is no evidence to support the claim that video game playing causes any significant ill effects. Garfield did research in 1994 and found that action video games improve spatial reasoning skills. Despite males' advantage of having better spatial relation skills, there were no gender differences in the rate of improvement in spatial skills after playing a video game for 6 hours. Given the influence of stimulation on the development of spatial skills, the researchers propose that video game playing may contribute to gender equality in spatial skills. In addition, the influence on spatial skills, researchers have found that video game playing may improve individuals' ability to divide their attention while attending to a task. Rubin did research in 2004, concurred that video game playing may actually give individuals an edge in life. He reports that researchers have found that players can make sharper soldiers, drivers, and surgeons. Their reaction time is better and their peripheral vision is more acute. They are taking risks, finding themselves at ease in a demanding environment that requires paying special attention on several levels at once. The brains of adolescents are still developing. In fact, the development is taking place in a very critical part of the brain associated with rational thinking and decision-making, which is in the frontal lobes. What's more, the emotional part of the brain, the limbic system, is particularly active. This is why we consider adolescents to have raging hormones. The thinking, planning, and deciding part of the brain has not developed to the point that they have full control over their emotions. We know this through brain imaging techniques that now allow us to see in real time brain activity while people are performing different activities. For instance, research shows that when processing emotional information, the teen's limbic system is more active than the frontal lobes. This research has found an interesting application to the legal system. Legislators and advocates are using the research to argue for changes in laws affecting teenagers. For instance, statistics have long shown that teenagers are much more prone to be involved in motor vehicle accidents. Pulling together the research on brain functioning with what we know about peer influence, some states have put limits on the number of passengers a teenager driver can have. The reasoning is due to brain immaturity. Teens may be less able to deflect peer pressure to take risks when driving, and the more peers present in the car, the greater the pressure. Another area in which this research is being used is in the laws that allow teenagers charged with serious crimes to be tried as adults. Advocates ask if this is fair, when teenagers still have the minds of children. For years, psychologists have known that the teenagers don't have the cognitive understanding of adults when it comes to participating in trials. Now we have brain research to back this up.
We have this discussion a lot in face-to-face classes, so I want you to think, talk with others around you, talk to your family, your friends. What do you think we should do with kids that commit crimes? Should they be tried as adults? Should they not be tried as adults? Some of you may know the Slender Man case. Those are the two girls that were 12 years old that attacked their friend and stabbed her, I think 17 times or 19 times. Do we charge them as adults? Do we not charge them as adults? I'll let you look up the case to figure out what happened with that and how that played out. There was a 10-year-old boy in Pennsylvania. If you do an internet search for this, it's like 10-year-old boy kills 90-year-old woman, something like that would be the headline. And they wanted to charge him as an adult. I'm thinking that this case transferred to juvenile court because there's no follow-up. I can't find what happened to the outcome of that case. But with that case, this is a kid that had a history of aggression. He's 10 years old. It was the grandfather, a woman that was staying with the grandfather. The grandfather was like this woman's caretaker. And the 90-year-old woman yelled at the kid to get out of her room, something along those lines. And he punched her, choked her with her cane, did enough bodily harm to cause her death. Should he be charged as an adult? Should he not be charged as an adult? If we charge him as an adult, he serves 25 years, 40 years, somewhere in that range. And then what? He gets out at 35, 40, 45 years of age. How are we going to then, reintegrate him into society? Most of our young kids like this that serve significant time, along with the prison system in general, we see the recidivism rates high. So in a case like this child, what do we do? There's so many cases out there like this. I think the most recent one that I heard about is the kid who killed his mother, shot his mother, over her not ordering him like a virtual reality headset. And I do believe that they're looking at charging him as an adult as well. But that's a very recent case in the last few weeks, so we don't have a lot of information on that one yet.
As Sandrock discusses in the textbook, the process of puberty takes several years. Hormonal changes that stimulate the biological changes actually start around age 8.5 for females and 9.5 for males. Yet adolescents do not complete puberty until mid to late teens. Recall that the changes that occur during puberty include biological, psychological, and social changes. Thus, the term biopsychosocial captures the essence of puberty. The hormonal changes interact with the psychological adjustment that is necessary during puberty, and these in turn interact with social relationships with peers and family. For girls, menarche is considered within the normal range if it appears between the ages of 9 and 15. An increasing number of U.S. girls are beginning puberty at age 8 and 9 years of age, with African American girls developing earlier than non-Latino white girls. One psychological aspect of physical change in puberty is universal. Adolescents are preoccupied with their bodies and develop images of what their bodies are like. Gender differences characterize adolescents' perceptions of their bodies. In general, girls are less happy with their bodies and have more negative body images than boys throughout puberty. Girls' more negative body images may be due to media portrayals of the attractiveness of being thin and the increase in body fat in girls during puberty. A recent study found that both boys' and girls' body images become more positive as they moved from the beginning to the end of adolescence. For some individuals, adolescence is a time for acknowledgement of homosexual feelings. Retrospective studies have provided us with a basic understanding of this development. Prospective longitudinal studies are essential for us to gain a better understanding of this complex development. Homosexual teens often struggle emotionally and socially. They are often rejected and bullied by both peers and family members. They are at an increased risk for attempting suicide. This can be a good place to tie in the topic of risk factors for suicidal ideations with some adolescents. Discuss what signs of contemplating suicide look like, as well as prevention programs. In a U.S. national survey conducted in 2009, 62% of 12th graders reported that they had experienced sexual intercourse, compared with 32% of 9th graders. By age 20, 77% of U.S. youth have engaged in sexual intercourse. Nationally, 49% of 12th graders, 40% of 11th graders, 29% of 10th graders, and 21% of 9th graders report being sexually active. Sexual initiation varies by ethnic group in the United States. In a recent national U.S. survey of 9th to 12th graders, 67% of African Americans, 51% of Latinos, and 43% of non-Latino whites said they had experienced sexual intercourse. In this study, 15% of African Americans, compared with 7% of Latinos and 3% of non-Latino whites, reported having their first sexual experience before the age of 13. Sleep is vital to your well-being, just as important as the air you breathe, the water you drink, and the food you eat. It can even help you to better manage stress, especially the stress you feel of being a teen. Biological sleep patterns shift toward later times for both sleeping and waking during adolescence, meaning it's natural to not be able to fall asleep before 11 p.m. Teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night to function best. Most teens do not get enough sleep. One study found that only 15% reported sleeping 8.5 hours on school nights. Teens tend to have irregular sleep patterns across the week. They typically stay up late, sleeping on the weekends. This can affect their biological clocks and hurt the quality of their sleep. Many teens suffer from treatable sleep disorders such as narcolepsy, insomnia, restless leg syndrome, or sleep apnea. Not getting enough sleep or having sleep difficulties can limit your ability to learn, listen, concentrate, and solve problems. You may even forget important information like names, numbers, your homework, or a date with a special person in your life. They make you more prone to pimples. Lack of sleep can contribute to acne and other skin problems. Lack of sleep can lead to aggressive or inappropriate behavior, such as yelling at your friends, being impatient with your teachers or family members. Can cause you to eat too much or eat unhealthy foods like sweets and fried foods that lead to weight gain. It heightens the effects of alcohol and possibly increase the use of caffeine and nicotine. Contributes to illness, and you're not as likely to use equipment safely or drive while you're drowsy. In order to improve sleep, you need to make sleep a priority. Naps can help pick you up and make you work more efficiently if you plan them right. Naps that are too long or too close to bedtime can interfere with your regular sleep. Make your room a safe haven. Keep it cool, quiet, and dark. Let in bright light in the morning to signal your body to wake up. No pills, vitamins, or drinks can replace good sleep. Consuming caffeine close to bedtime can hurt your sleep, so avoid coffee, tea, soda pop, and chocolate late in the day. Nicotine and alcohol will also interfere with your sleep. When you're sleep deprived, you're as impaired as driving with a blood alcohol content of 0.08%, which is illegal for drivers in many states. Drowsy driving causes over 100,000 crashes each year. It's best to establish a bed and wake time and stick to it. Coming as close as you can on the weekends, a consistent sleep schedule can help you feel less tired. It allows your body to get in sync naturally with patterns, and you'll find it easier to fall asleep at bedtime with this type of routine. Don't eat, drink, or exercise within a few hours of your bedtime. Don't leave homework to the last minute. Avoid the TV, computer, and phone the last hour before you go to bed. Stick to quiet, calm activities, and it'll help you fall asleep more easily. If you do the same things every night before bed, you teach your body the signals that it's time for bed. Try taking a bath or shower. That also gives you extra time in the morning. Read a book. Keep a diary or to-do list. Jot down notes before you sleep so you don't worry or stress about them. Most teens experience changes in their sleep schedules. Their internal body clocks can cause them to fall asleep and wake up later. We can't change this, but it's best to try and participate in interactive activities to counteract your sleepiness. And then make sure that those activities at night are calming. If teens need 8 to 10 hours of sleep to do their best and naturally go to sleep around 11, one way to get more sleep is to start school later. Teens' natural sleep cycle puts them in conflict with school start times. Most high school students need an alarm clock or a parent to wake them up on school days. They're like zombies getting ready for school and find it hard to be alert and pay attention in class. Because they are sleep deprived, they are sleepy all day and cannot do their best. Schools that have set later bell times find that students do not go to bed later, but they get 1 more hour of sleep per school night, which means 5 hours more per week. Enrollment and attendance improves and students are more likely to be on time when school starts. Parents and teachers report that teens are more alert in the morning and in better moods. They're less likely to feel depressed or need to visit the nurse or the school counselor. Eating disorders are serious conditions related to persistent eating behaviors that negatively impact health, emotions, and the ability to function in important areas of life. The most common eating disorders are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. The exact cause of eating disorders is unknown. However, certain factors might put teens at risk of developing eating disorders, which includes societal pressure. Popular culture tends to place a premium on being thin. Even with a normal body weight, teens can easily develop the perception that they're fat. This can trigger an obsession with losing weight and dieting. Favorite activities, participation in activities that value learnness, such as modeling and elite athletics, can increase the risk of teen eating disorders. And then personal factors. Genetics or biological factors might make some teens more likely to develop eating disorders. Personality traits such as perfectionism, anxiety, or rigidity also might play a role. People with anorexia eat very little on purpose. This leads to a very low body weight. They have intense fear of weight gain. They fear looking fat. They have a distorted body image. They see themselves as fat even when they are very thin. People with anorexia are very strict about what and how much they will eat. They may think about food or calories almost all the time. To lose weight, some people with anorexia fast or exercise too much. Others may use laxatives, diuretics, or water pills, or enemas. People with bulimia overeat and feel out of control to stop. This is called binge eating. They do many things to make up for overeating. They may make themselves throw up on purpose after they overeat. This is called purging to prevent weight gain. They may use laxatives, diuretics, weight loss pills, fast, or exercise a lot. They judge themselves based on body shape and weight. People with bulimia eat more during a set period of time than most people would. If a person regularly binges and purges, it may be a sign of bulimia. Unlike people with anorexia who are very low weight, people with bulimia may be thin, average weight, or overweight. People with bulimia often hide their eating and purging from others. People with binge eating disorder overeat and feel out of control to stop. This is called binge eating. They eat large amounts even when they're not hungry. They may feel upset or guilty after binge eating. They often gain weight and become very overweight. Many people with binge eating disorder eat faster than normal. They may eat alone so others don't see how much they are eating. Unlike people with bulimia, those with binge eating disorder do not make themselves throw up, use laxatives, or exercise a lot to make up for the binge eating. If a person binge eats at least once a week for 3 months, it may be a sign of binge eating disorders. And then there's another one, I don't have a slide for it, but it's ARFID, Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. They're not interested in food or they avoid foods. They lose weight or don't gain expected amount of weight. They're not afraid of gaining weight and they don't have a poor body image. People with RFID don't eat food because they're turned off by the smell, taste, texture, or color of food. They may be afraid that they will choke or vomit. They don't have anorexia, bulimia, or another medical problem that would explain their eating behaviors. Cognitive development means the growth of a child's ability to think and reason. This growth happens differently from ages 6 to 12 and from 12 to 18. Children aged 12 to 18 during adolescence, they do more complex thinking. This is also known as formal logical operations. This includes the ability to do abstract thinking. This means thinking about possibilities. Reason from known principles. This means forming own new ideas or questions. Consider many viewpoints. This means to compare or debate ideas or opinions. Think about the process of thinking. This means being aware of the act of thought processes. From ages 12 to 18, children grow in the way they think. They move from concrete to formal logical operations. Each child moves ahead at their own rate in their ability to think in more complex ways. They develop their own view of the world. Sorry about that. I'm going to pick this up on the next slide. A child in early adolescence uses more complex thinking. They're focused on personal decision making, both in school and at home. They begin to question authority and society's standards. They begin to form and speak his or her own thoughts and views on many topics. They start to find preferences such as sports, personal appearance, what's attractive, whether or not the parental rules should be changed. A child in middle adolescence uses more complex thinking, expands thinking to include more philosophical and futuristic concerns, often questions more extensively, as well as analyzing more extensively. They think about and begin to form their own code of ethics as to what they think is right. They think about different possibilities and start to develop their own identity, such as who am I? They think about and begin to systematically consider possible future goals as what do they want. They think long term, they use systematic thinking and begin to influence relationships with others. A child in late adolescence uses complex thinking to focus on less self-centered concepts and personal decision making. They have increased thoughts about global concepts such as justice, history, politics, and patriotism. They often develop idealistic views on specific topics or concerns. They may debate and develop intolerance of imposing views. They begin to focus thinking on making career decisions, and they're emerging a role as an adult in society. Based on Erik Erikson's groundbreaking work on identity and psychosocial development in the 60s, Canadian developmental psychologist James Marcia redefined and extended Erikson's model, primarily focusing on adolescent development. Addressing Erikson's notion of identity crisis, Marcia said that the adolescent stage consists neither of identity resolution nor identity confusion, but rather the degree to which one has explored and committed to an identity in a variety of life domains, from vocation, religion, relational choices, gender roles, and so on. Marcia's theory of identity achievement argues that the two distinct parts form an adolescent's identity. Crisis, a time when one's values and choices are being reevaluated, and commitment. He defined a crisis as a time of upheaval where old values or choices are being re-examined. The end outcome of a crisis leads to a commitment made to a certain role or value. So these are the first two, identity foreclosure and identity diffusion, of the identity statuses of psychological identity development. The core idea is that one's sense of identity is determined largely by the choices and commitments made regarding certain personal and social traits. The work done in this paradigm considers how much one has made certain choices and how much he or she displays a commitment to those choices. Identity involves the adoption of a sexual orientation, a set of values and ideals, and a vocational direction. A well-developed identity gives on a sense of one's strengths, weaknesses, and individual uniqueness. A person with a less well-developed identity is not able to define his or her personal strengths and weaknesses and does not have a well-articulated sense of self. To better understand the identity formation process, Marcia conducted interviews with young people. He asked whether the participants in his study had established a commitment to an occupation and ideology, whether they had experienced or were presently experiencing a decision-making period, such as an identity crisis. Marcia developed the framework for thinking about the identity in terms of the 4 identity statuses. And so this slide tells you a little bit about moratorium and identity achievement.
Middle school can be a fun time for kids. There's a lot more freedom going from elementary to middle school. You have all your school dances. There's usually more sports that are available, more responsibility because you're changing classes and bouncing from one to the next, so you're not stuck with the same teacher all day. So there's a lot more choices at this age. And so we start to increase responsibility. We start to see peers becoming more important at this stage. And also participation in extracurricular activities, sports and clubs, yearbook, things like that. Some drawbacks to middle school. It's very nerve-wracking. You have to remember locker combinations. You have to change your clothes in front of others during gym class. There's no recess, but you do have gym every day, so that's kind of a trade-off. But you have a variety of classes and some electives that you can pick, and so it's a little bit different environment for kids to adjust to and get used to. And so this can cause more anxiety. We tend to see more issues with bullying, trying to fit in and find your, crowd or your clique of people can be challenging for some kids, especially if they tend to be more of a loner or an introvert and aren't as social as others. This goes back to what I was saying, how we put a lot more pressure on our teenagers today. We don't just expect them to get good grades and to be in all the AP or honors courses in high school, as well as participating in sports and, government and yearbook and things like that. Now we ask them to do a service learning project or some kind of volunteer work. Colleges today don't just want to see a good GPA and good test scores. They want to see that students are well-rounded. So the more involvement kids can have during this time period, the more likely they are to get into college or, get the college of their choice. So a lot of high schools today are requiring students to volunteer and do some type of service learning project as part of the high school graduation.
Identity versus confusion is the 5th stage of ego, according to psychologist Erik Erikson. This stage occurs during adolescence between the ages of 12 and 18. During this stage, the adolescents explore their independence and develop a sense of self. According to Erikson, people progress through a series of stages as they grow and change throughout life. During each stage, they face a developmental conflict. This developmental conflict is identity versus identity confusion, or role confusion in this stage. During the identity versus confusion stage, the conflict is centered on developing a personal identity. Successfully completing this stage leads to a strong sense of self that will remain throughout life. As they transition from childhood to adulthood, teens may begin to feel confused or insecure about themselves as to how they fit into society. They seek to establish a sense of self. They experiment with different roles, activities, and behaviors. This is an important process of forming a strong identity and developing a sense of direction in life. Teen behavior often seems unpredictable and impulsive, but all of this is part of the process of finding a sense of personal identity. Parents and family members continue to exert an influence on how teens feel about themselves, but outside forces also become particularly important during this time. Friends, social groups, schoolmates, societal trends, even popular culture all play a role in shaping and forming an identity. Those who receive proper encouragement and reinforcement through personal exploration will emerge from this stage with a strong sense of self and a feeling of independence and control. Those who remain unsure of their beliefs and desires will remain insecure and confused about themselves and the future. Resolving the crisis at this stage of development involves committing to a particular identity. This might involve committing to a career path, deciding what social groups to associate with, and even developing a personal style. Those who are successful develop fidelity, a psychological virtue characterized by the ability to relate to others and form genuine relationships. This ability plays an important role in the upcoming stage known as intimacy versus isolation. So what happens to those who do not end up successfully forming an identity at this point in development? Kids who are not allowed to explore and test out different identities might be left with what Erickson referred to as role confusion. These individuals are not sure who they are or what they like. They tend to drift from one job or relationship to another, never really sure what to do with their lives, and instead they feel a sense of personal cohesiveness. They're left feeling disappointed and confused about their place in life.
We often see a lot of parents take a step back during this time period, and that can actually be a mistake. Parents need to be more present in their teenagers' lives and what they think they are. Yes, give them independence. Yes, let them make mistakes. That's how they learn. But, they should be involved and still set limits and know where their kids are. That's how we try and avoid the drug use and gang involvement and, kids doing things that are getting them more into serious trouble. Pay attention to who their friends are. That says a lot about what it is that they're doing. Your friends, they're either going to help build you up in life or they're going to help pull you down in life. So you want friends that are supportive, that are going to, build you up and help you get to reach your goals in life and to, the higher levels in life and whatever that looks like for you. We want people surrounding us that are going to help support us throughout life.
35% of teens have some experience with dating or romantic relationships. 18% are currently in a relationship of some kind. Dating and experience with romance are relatively common among teens from 13 to 17. In a survey that was done, it was broken down into 3 different categories of romantic relationships and found that 14% of teens are currently in a relationship. They consider to be with a serious boyfriend, girlfriend, or significant other. 5% of teens are in a current romantic relationship but do not consider it to be serious. 16% of teens are not currently dating but have had some sort of romantic relationship, whether serious or otherwise, in the past. 64% of teens indicate they've never been in a romantic relationship of any kind. 1% declined to provide the relationship status. 35% of teens who say they are either currently involved with a romantic partner or have dated, hooked up with, or had a romantic relationship with someone will serve as the focus of this research. When they refer to teen daters, teens with relationship experience, or teens with dating experience, they're referring to roughly 1/3 of teenagers who are currently in some type of relationship. Most teens with romantic relationship experience are not sexually active. Some 30% of teen daters say they've never had sex. 2/3 of teen daters indicate they have. 2% decline to indicate whether they're sexually active or not. Older teens are more likely to be sexually active. Besides age, there's relatively few demographic differences when it comes to teens' experiences with dating and romantic relationships. Boys and girls and those with different racial, ethnic, and economic backgrounds are equally likely to have been in such relationships.
Kids today are around media minimum of 7.5 hours a day. The constant cell phone usage, iPads, computers, laptops, all the social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, things that are at the tip of their fingers 24/7 is what's causing our kids to be surrounded by so much technology and media. And this generation that we have currently is supposed to be the loneliest generation, is what researchers are saying. Having a lot of friends on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or something along those lines is not the same as having friends and a social life in real life. And so this is increasing our depression, anxiety, mental illnesses in general, because we are surrounding ourselves with so much media use. TikTok is a great example. Check your phones and see how many hours a day do you spend on TikTok, watching random videos. Those are times that we used to talk and socialize with others. Now we see kids out together and they're not even conversing. They're, sitting on their phones, sending each other videos and things like that. So this has caused a huge problem with our mental health in general, with all ages, but especially with adolescents.
Social and emotional maturity are intertwined. Therefore, as teens, emotional maturity increases their relationships with their peers. This increased vulnerability in the relationships and intimacy requires greater trust among peers. During adolescent years, teen peer groups become increasingly important as they experience more closeness in these friendships and more gratifying relationships with their peers. Excuse me. Teens now turn to one another instead of their families. This increased reliance on friendships is another way that they grow their independence. Because acceptance by a peer group becomes so important, teens may modify their speech, dress, behavior, choices, and activities in order to become more similar to their peers. This provides them with a sense of security and affirms their acceptance into their chosen peer group. When teens modify their choices or behavior in order to conform to what their friends are doing, they're answering to peer pressure. Peer pressure is often associated with negative outcomes such as skipping school, wearing distasteful clothing, or alcohol and other drug use. Many parents don't recognize that peer pressure can also exert a positive influence. Because of advanced cognitive and emotional maturity, teens can now encourage each other to make wise decisions and discourage each other from making harmful choices. Since it's important for youth to fit in with their peer group, they may also decide to participate in the same hobbies or activities as their friends. This enables them to spend more time together and bond over shared experiences. They tend to gravitate toward peer groups with whom they share common interests and activities, similar cultural backgrounds, or simply a similar outlook on life. But oftentimes, as teens experiment with their identity, they may be attracted to peer groups with dissimilar interests. Adolescent peer groups are quite a bit different from the typical circle of friends that are characteristic of younger children. Adolescent peer groups are closer and more tightly knit. This increased group cohesion is due to the changing quality of teens' relationships. The increased vulnerability and emotional closeness of adolescent peer relationships require more trust. There's a greater commitment and allegiance to their peer group. The increased group cohesion also serves to create a sense of interpersonal safety and protection. When youth have several good friends who remain loyal through thick and thin, they feel more secure and confident in their social support system. Suicides among young people continue to be a serious problem. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for children, adolescents, and young adults aged 15 to 24. The majority of children and adolescents who attempt suicide have a significant mental health disorder, usually depression. Among younger children, suicide attempts are often impulsive. They may be associated with feelings of sadness, confusion, anger, or problems with attention and hyperactivity. Among teenagers, Suicide attempts may be associated with feelings of stress, self-doubt, pressure to succeed, financial uncertainty, disappointment, and loss. For some teens, suicide may appear to be a solution to their problems. Depression and suicidal feelings are treatable mental health disorders. Child or adolescent needs to have his or her illness recognized and diagnosed and appropriately treated with a comprehensive treatment plan. Thoughts about suicide and suicide attempts are often associated with depression. In addition to depression, other risk factors include family history of suicide attempts, exposure to violence, impulsivity, aggressive or disruptive behavior, access to firearms, bullying, feelings of hopelessness or helplessness, acute loss or rejection. Children and adolescents thinking about suicide may make openly suicidal statements such as, "I wish I was dead," or "I won't be a problem for you much longer." Other warning signs associated with suicide can include changes in eating or sleeping habits, frequent or pervasive sadness, withdrawal from friends, family, and regular activities, frequent complaints about physical symptoms often related to emotions such as stomach aches, headaches, fatigue, decline in the quality of schoolwork, preoccupation with death and dying. Young people who are thinking about suicide may also stop planning for and talking about the future. They may begin to give away important possessions. People often feel uncomfortable talking about suicide. However, asking your child or adolescent whether he or she is depressed and thinking about suicide can be helpful. Asking questions like, "Are you feeling sad or depressed? Are you thinking about hurting or killing yourself? Have you ever thought about hurting or killing yourself?" Rather than putting thoughts in your child's head, these questions can provide assurance that somebody cares and will give your child the chance to talk about their problems. Any child a child or adolescent with suicidal thoughts should be evaluated immediately by a trained and qualified mental health professional.